Alright, what's going on, guys? Trev back again, here to bring you another video. This one's going to be doing another X-Men Days of Future Past video. Again, this one will contain some spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, you may or may not want to watch this. We're going to be talking about X-Men plot holes. Alright, good stuff. So in this one, basically what I'm going to be doing is giving my thoughts on a few of the plot holes in the X-Men franchise up until this time. And then I'm actually going to do another video, I think, on the time frame of X-Men. So talking about whether or not X1 through X3 actually occurred now that we've had the Days of Future Past release and the time frame has been reset or been kind of turned back to normal. So did X1 through X3 actually happen? That video will probably be released tomorrow. So for this one, we're going to be focusing on and talking about some plot holes because there are some. The biggest plot hole I see with Days of Future Past and also the Wolverine is the fact that Professor X still has his old body, which is the Patrick Stewart body. Now, some people would say that's because it was directed by Bryan Singer, so X3 wasn't his, so it's not canon. However, you can't do that because in Wolverine's flashbacks in Days of Future Past, he sees the events of X3. Also in the Wolverine, he sees the events of X3 as he has to kill Jean, that pain, that suffering that he went through then. It's evident that did occur in this universe. So, how then is Professor X in his body at current time in Days of Future Past, in the Sentinel future, when he was basically obliterated to bits by Jean Grey's telekinesis, her ability, and she made him explode in her house, if you guys remember from way back in Last Stand X3. So how does that make sense that he would be in his body still? Okay, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's a big-time plot hole. Now, I've heard a few people try to explain it away in some different ways. The best theory I've heard is that he's not actually in his body. He is in the body of the man who he switched consciousness with in X3. If you guys remember the after-the-credits scene from that, there was another man who had no consciousness, and they kind of set it up for that when Professor X earlier on in the movie was giving a lecture. He talked about ethics and whether or not it was morally okay for someone to, transfer their consciousness into a man's body who his body's fine, but he has no consciousness. So that was kind of set up as the possible way for Professor X to survive X3 was to transfer his consciousness into the other man's body. So as a result of that, now he shouldn't be in the Patrick Stewart body. However, one possibility is that he is, since of course he's got his powers and they're at such high level at that time because he's survived for so long and he's gotten stronger as he's used them over the years. He is projecting himself through to everyone else as well as us, the viewer, in that form. So he's projecting himself using his powers in that form so everyone sees him as him and not just some guy that they have no idea who he is, since they wouldn't recognize him otherwise, and this way is easier for people to recognize him, people to see him, people to understand him. So that is probably the best sort of patch theory. I think of it as like a patch theory because you have a plot hole and you're patching, you're filling that hole with that theory, but it really is a plot hole. I would say it really doesn't make sense that he would be in that body. However, for the sake of the movie, for the sake of having Patrick Stewart return as Professor X in the visual, let's use the patch theory, let's use that fill gap and make sense. But it's still a huge plot hole, admittedly. There are a lot of others because there's so many events that have happened over the years in different X-Men movies. Another one, for example, would be Wolverine having the adamantium claws in the Sentinel future. He shouldn't. Basically, that's another plot hole. He shouldn't have adamantium claws. He should have bone claws. We know this because if you guys remember in the movie when Kitty was, concentrating and keeping him going in the past, she was focusing and he gets cut by one of the adamantium blades. So another patch theory for this one, or hole filler for this one, is that Magneto, since of course he's alongside them now and they are fighting alongside together, of course, as mutants, brothers in arms, he has given Wolverine his adamantium back. He has given him his claws back, which is why we see him with them in the Sentinel future. Because if you guys remember in the Wolverine, of course, his claws were cut off. So That one makes sense there for that one too, if you think of it like that. But it is a filler. It is a fill gap because that is a gap and it's never been explained. They probably should have had him have bone claws in the future. Although, you know, if you're going to be fighting mega powered sentinels and your race is facing extinction and you happen to come across Magneto, you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to ask Magneto for a favor. They also kind of touched on a little bit too when Magneto saw his bone claws and said, you know, be cooler if they were metal or something like that. So I guess that makes sense as well too. Aside from that, I mean, there's lots of other little ones, but those two are pretty much the most discussed. Those are the major ones that are out there right now. Some of the other movies, we had some different ones. For example, X-Men Origins, Wolverine, we had some different, you know, characters there. Like, for example, the White Queen there was, like, she looked way younger. Emma Frost in X-Men Origins Wolverine looked way younger than she did and wasn't really like the same character at that time as she was in X-Men First Class. So, you know, or you could say maybe it's a mutant that has similar powers and looks just like her, but isn't actually her, but she has a diamond form. Okay. So there are a lot of other, you know, little things here and there because of the amount of movies they've made, because they've had to switch actors sometimes for certain roles, things like that. Trask was switched to Peter Dinklage, which is an upgrade, I think, from the previous actor. I forget his name who played him in the previous movies, at least in X3. So, yeah, so there's a lot of different little things, but I thought I would just kind of get it out there to address those couple plot holes that are the most popular right now. And yes, there are others. You can point to others, but I think those two are the biggest. So that kind of explains those away, if you guys were looking for an explanation. But I think they're just generally plot holes that they didn't explain in the movie either. So, you know, I mean, the movie was so dense, maybe they felt it wasn't necessary, but there it is. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about those, and if you found any other plot holes you want to talk about, discuss them in the comments below. If you like the video, please like the video below. If you want to help support the channel, add it to favorites, share it on your Facebook or wherever you want, and I'll call it here. So for this video, guys, see you tomorrow for the timeline discussion. This is Trev. I'm saying peace.